Liam, we're back and we've made it to the end of the summer for those of us in the Northern Hemisphere, where in August we saw a rise in application DDoS compared to July. Are you ready to dive into August's DDoS report with me?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Perfect. Starting the month really aggressively, actually. August 1st saw our third largest day of attack volume in this entire year, all of 2025. Similar to the largest days that we've seen this year, though, the vast majority of that attack traffic was attributable to a single enterprise, in this case, operating in the media and entertainment industry, as opposed to high technology like we saw in the other two largest attack days this year. I mean, it's really a reminder to all enterprises that regardless of industry, attackers may come a knocking.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't just one large attack; it was multiple um, uh, attacks that we saw. One thing that's really consistent is that all different industries are subject to DDoS attack, and August was no exception.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this month we took a look at the IPs and their source networks that were leveraged as part of the automatic rules and mitigations that fast DDoS protection creates, and found that individual IPs were used in 42% of August's rules, almost half, right? Diving deeper, what we find is that over half of those IPs using rules, they were only leveraged one single time, pointing really to the short-lived nature of IPs and attacks, right? Attackers likely know that they're being watched and they pivot to other IPs in their botnet or other IP that they have at their disposal to continue attacking, right? Diverging from that trend, though, we took a look at the opposite end of the spectrum. What was the IP that was involved in the most attacks? And what we found is that it was involved in 184 unique attacks throughout the month on 59 different customers. I mean, these were mostly in the same industries, both high tech and M&E. But we then took this a step further and we took a look outside of Fastly's borders on, third-party abuse reporting sites. And what we found is that in August, this same IP was flagged dozens of times by all sorts of folks throughout the globe. Interestingly, we then took a look back at our own data to see, was this IP leveraged in attacks prior to August? And we also see that it wasn't. So it's a trend we're going to continue to monitor and keep an eye on this IP, but it was a really interesting example of just how far an attacker can go on a single IP before they get completely blocked off, right?
Yeah, it was definitely interesting. Attackers look for different ways to be efficient and to hide their activities. And in some cases, they may use legitimate hosts, right, to launch an attack, which can allow IPs like this one to persist longer than they should.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we took things one layer higher though, right? And this month we went to the source networks of those IPs, their ASNs, right? And what we found is that they are used in 66% of the rules in August, which really makes sense because they cover a much broader swath of the internet than just an IP does, right? But when we looked at those top 10 ASNs that were included in the rules, what we find is that 71% of them tie back to the hyperscale clouds that many of us are really intimately familiar with. Liam, I would love to get your thoughts on why you think that may be.
Yeah, on one hand, maybe easier to gain resources on hyperscalers, and on the other, um, many of those networks or connections from them need to be allowed through, right? They're used for legitimate business purposes. So it makes sense that attackers may try to hide in between that other legitimate traffic.
Yeah, definitely. So for those listening, what should you really take away from all this information? Obviously, this is just highlights from the report. Be sure to check out the full thing. But three key takeaways that you can get from this are firstly, that media and entertainment continues to receive the highest distribution of attack volume. And if you're operating in that space, we urge you to ensure that you have the proper tooling in place to mitigate those attacks, whether that's with Fastly or another vendor in the space. As long as you're protected, we're happy, right? Um, the second one is that IPs are typically only used in one attack before going away, at least for the month, and in our monthly reporting. I mean, if you're using IPs and static rules, for example, you should really consider an automated solution that can handle that effort for you, Or try using ASNs, for example, which are broader and may work equally as effectively when combined with other attributes that you can see about that traffic. And the third one is that if you're an enterprise, you really got to ensure that you can withstand those massive tens of billions of request attacks over a really short period, because we've seen that it's not just one industry that's getting hit by those. More and more continue popping up as we get through the year. Liam, before we finish up, I would love any final thoughts on your end about this month.
Yeah, I think it reinforces the need for an automated solution that can respond quickly and based on the behavior, right, of the incoming traffic. Fastly has a solution called Fastly DDoS protection that's designed for that. It's an adaptive solution that detects and mitigates attacks in near real time.
Beautiful. Well, Liam, thank you so much for joining me again this month. I look forward to seeing in the next one where we take a look at how September and application DDoS attacks looked. Appreciate the time.